rubbing that we made as a pattern to reglaze the window. So we try to retain as much of the original glass as possible. We have several processes. We do a conservatory glue with a resin, or we can try to match the glass as closely as we can with the selection of stuff we have in the studio.
So usually how much of the glass is old? I mean, how much of the new piece is?
Well, it's very seldom that we put a new
Okay.
piece in. For instance, if there's a piece like this which had a little tiny corner broken off. Rather than recut a piece, I'll retain the original glass and put an extra little piece of lead in there that gets soldered over. So something small and insignificant like that will be retained. If there was a BB hole in it and the piece shattered into multiple pieces, it's more likely we would replace the glass than try and piece something together that's multiple broken.
Yeah.
So most of the glass that we retain is original. We try to keep as much of the original as possible.
Okay.
But occasionally there's some things we'll have to try and match. And these windows are a little interesting because it seems like there was some repair work done before they actually came to us at some point in the past, because like these three pieces, for instance, are a glass that you don't really find in the rest of the pattern. So it seems like at some point somebody had already done some restoration, and not knowing how old or recent that is, we try to keep that glass if we can, because it may have been that way for 70 years at this point, and that's what they know and that's what they see, and so we try to retain as much of the original as possible, and only replace it when we have something that's a pretty close match. But when you're dealing with windows that are 100 years old, it's unlikely that you have that exact glass
Yeah, that's what I was
on a shelf in another room.
Yeah.
So there is like kind of a tolerance. You might not have the color exactly right, but the texture matches, or the texture might be slightly different, but the glass is the right color, and there's a little bit of play that we have. In the industry, there's a certain level of tolerance, but you try to keep as much of the original as possible. And once this is all done and rebuilt and reglazed and re-weatherproofed, get another 100 years out of it. It's basically, at that point, it's like a brand new window. Pretty interesting work. I'm one of those lucky people that love what they do for a living.
Yeah.
Gotta like jigsaw puzzles.
Yeah. See, the solder holds the lead, and the lead holds the glass.
Yeah, and once everything is glazed, I still have another piece of lead that I'm bending to wrap onto here, but once everything is glazed and it's all finished, I'll go ahead with a soldering iron and solder each joint. Where every piece of lead meets will be a solder joint to make it like one solid structural unit. And you can actually see like an example. Here's one that I already put together,
Yeah.
which is a solid panel.
Oh yeah, I can see the solder.
Yeah, you can see the solder joints, how everywhere that the lead meets. Everywhere the lead meets, you can see that it's all soldered together. So it's a solid panel at this point. It still needs to be weatherproofed. We still need to put in the cement to do the weatherproofing. You can hear it rattle a little bit. It's still loose, but this is what it'll look like once everything's soldered together.
So were these frames there before, or did you just put them?
It is a stone opening in a church right over on Western Avenue, across the bridge of Cavalry United, and they're stone openings.
Okay.
So that's kind of unique, and in that instance we use this, which is called stone lead. Because when you're putting it into a stone opening, it's not like there's a wood stop you can remove. It has to fit into that. There's nothing to add to it. It's just got to fit in there. And in order to kind of cheat that in a way, we use this stone lead. Now, whenever we go to install it, the stone lead gets folded up all around the window, and then you slide it into that stone opening. And once it's into the stone opening, you open that back up to hold it in place, to then go ahead and caulk it and seal it up. So this is kind of a unique circumstance. We don't always use the stone lead. It's only for when there's a stone opening. If it were, for instance, a wood sash that had stops, you would remove the stops, make the window to the right size, put it in, and then just frame it back in with the stops. But when it's a stone opening, you don't really have that option. So this is kind of a unique circumstance that you might not see all that often.
Thanks, Shane.
No problem, my pleasure.
Oh, see the horseshoe nails?
Yeah.
Horseshoe nails,
Uh,
those are tapered,
Mm-hmm.
can drive them in easy and pull them out.
Nice thing about them is that they're flat on one side.
okay.
These are actual horseshoe nails that they'd use to put horseshoes on a horse, but they're flat on one side, so it's easy to put it up against something and it stays perfectly straight and it gives you that hard edge, whereas if you were to turn it around and it's tapered, as you hammer it, the taper, tends to push the nail out. So it's really nice to use the horseshoe nails that are flat on one side. It helps a lot with the holding stuff in place. A lot of times we build against a board. If it were a rectangular window like the one you see behind you, we'd have two, you could set up two boards, but since this one's just an odd shape and there's only the one straight edge, I'm kind of building everything. You start with the pieces in the center and kind of work your way out and work your way up at the same time. Pretty interesting stuff though. It's the kind of job where you're always doing the same type of work, but the job's constantly changing. So you're always doing something new or something different, something unique. And then occasionally you come across something you haven't seen before and you learn a little something along the way.